Good morning again, coffee chat time. And this week we're going to dive deeper into explicit effective teaching again. And we're going to look more at review and the different types of review that you can do and probably need to do in both literacy and numeracy lessons. So over to Little Miss Trouble.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're either watching this on a Monday morning or at some other time. And yeah, we're doing a much deeper dive into review because there are many different ways that you can do review. And we're going to just talk about a couple of different ways we've used and we've found work well. So quickly reviewing the model we're using comes from intensiveintervention.org, in case you haven't seen that website or you missed the previous chat. We know that generally review has a great effect size, and we talked about this last week. But what we're doing now is we're talking about two different types of review, and type 1 is the previous lesson review. So that's your short-term or working memory. I taught this yesterday. Have they learned it? Do they know it today? And secondly, what we're talking about with our type 2 of review is our prior knowledge and experiences, which is your long-term memory. We've all read a lot, we've seen a lot online, we've done lots of things. Even your students have done lots of things. They've experienced a lot in their short lives, but it's about you highlighting and prompting them to use that knowledge, because oftentimes they don't.
Because the research tells us that our brain wants to connect to what it already knows. It wants to build webs of knowledge. That's why, like our brain is like a filing cabinet, and inside each, we've got the files, and when we're introducing some new knowledge, we need to find which file, or could be files, that this new knowledge will relate to. And then it's got somewhere to go and hook onto. Whereas if we just stuff it in there, do you know what it's like when you stuff something into your filing cabinet without putting it into the actual files? It's hard to find.
And sometimes you might be looking at a page within a folder, within the file, within the cabinet. And so if things are on the wrong page, they're never going to connect. So this is what we're talking about with review and the importance of prior knowledge. And it really is critical, really critical. So the first type, as we said, was the previous lesson review. Like I said, you taught it yesterday. Have they remembered? Have they learned it from yesterday and maintained it into their short-term memory, or maybe put some links to their long-term? But can they still remember what you taught yesterday? Because we had a discussion offline today and we talked about how sometimes students don't learn even though we've taught. So part of the purpose of review, I think, is to gain their attention for the start of the lesson. Make sure they're engaged. Make sure they're ready to learn in this lesson.
And I like that, Gail.
And then
that links back to even our model of can't and won't, that we're actually trying to be proactive in helping them want to learn and avoid the won't by this.
Exactly.
They link together nicely.
Exactly. So we're looking for some successful student responses based on what we taught yesterday, even if it's something as simple as, who can tell me what we learned yesterday? And you picking a student. Typically now, the most effective strategy is to not ask students to put their hands up, but to rather you randomly choose a student.
Yes.
And choose another student. Don't just choose one. And what you're trying to do as a teacher, and this is in the back of your working memory, is pick a range of students when you're doing this review. Don't pick the same students over and over again.
Yes. I like the terminology I've read is it's not a talent contest. You're not trying to find those that are going to shine. It's actually to find out whether or not what you taught yesterday has been recalled by the student.
Exactly.
It's not to try
Exactly.
and make kids win a contest.
You might want to even say, everybody close your eyes, think back to yesterday. So actually focus them on thinking back
I like
and
that.
remembering. You know, that means they're not looking at anyone else. They're not talking. Everyone's got their eyes closed. Oh, yeah, remember what we did yesterday. We did X. And then you're more likely to get a successful response.
Yeah, I
The
like
challenge
that. Yeah,
is
pause.
Yeah, pause. And
Is we put hands to chest, and you could get them to close their eyes, and can you think of one thing you remember yesterday? Could you think of two? And just it's very private, that their response. Yep. And that might help children who are a little more anxious about not wanting to appear dumb in the class, and they've got time to think. Yep. and you can scan the room and see whether or not kids are remembering.
But effective explicit teaching, and this is type 2, using your long-term knowledge. You want students to use that. You might have been to a rainforest, but so might some of your students. So what do they already know? What did they see? What did they do when they visited the rainforest? And then aside from that, which is your topic or content knowledge, that's called in the research declarative knowledge. You also need to think about the strategies that the students already know. Have you taught these before? Have you taught them to understand the main idea of a text if you're about to read text about rainforests? And how you scaffold that if you've got some students who don't know, who are new to your class or who have additional needs? But also, what strategies do I need to teach everyone? Does everyone need to have practice on finding the main idea in a paragraph, for example? Because we want them to learn the most important ideas.
Absolutely. And I think we do have to prioritise that around. There are some things that we could say, well, we could move on without those, but there are some foundational skills and strategies we couldn't move on without. Maybe that helps us. We were talking about that in that last decision in the slide before.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. An example in the numeracy, it's often a sub-skill review or a strategy review is highly necessary in an effective explicit review. And you might do, if the lesson's going to be on addition algorithms with regrouping, your review would be, let's go back over what we know about addition without regrouping. Quickly check that children understand the language around that, the procedure around that, and can answer your questions around that. Also, we'll talk in another little coffee chat around activating prior knowledge and experiences in numeracy warm-ups with a number sense focus, because a lot of research on the effectiveness of those. So the repetition of that and if you can relate that very closely to what the lesson's about, they can see, why do we do skip counting off the decade? Well, skip counting off the decade is going to help me when I'm doing the split and jump strategy. Or counting by twos will really help me when I want to do some multiplication by twos. Counting by fives will really help me when I want to read the clock at 5-minute intervals. Those are sort of experiences we want to put into the review part of a numeracy lesson.
Yep. And I think we'll delve into those more deeply, and we'll deal with this on Thursday as well.
We're going to pop these slides up, and I've added some numeracy references, those who are wanting to dig into further about where review fits in the research.
And that includes numeracy. That wonderful book that you've just held up, Linnell, the Hollingsworth
that's in there.
Ybarra book.
Yeah, and that's got literacy and numeracy examples.
Yep. And we've repeated the others on explicit instruction in this one,
yes,
I think, as well.
We've got the other ones that were there in week 6. So this is our week 7, and thanks for joining us.
Yep.